Okay, hello guys and welcome to Education channel. Today I'll talk about Python features, which is a very important topic that you should know, as it could be one of your future interview questions, and every programmer should know those features and concepts in that video. And if you didn't see my last video, that I introduced Python at, and also I gave a quick introduction to programming language as a whole, and also talked about Python uses and why it's popular, Python implementations and documentations, also the industries that depend on Python, and a lot of information that may be useful and new for you and could give you a solid background for what you are about to go in deeply. So if you didn't see it, go to the link in the description down below and enjoy the show. And also, if you want to get access of my cheat sheets for each video, you can get a membership at this channel, and you'll have an early access to my videos besides the cheat sheets that will help you study better what I've said in my video without needing to take a traditional paper and pen and write down your notes, and also those PDFs will be like a quick and informative reference for you that will help you study and remember the information well, with a very comfortable way to study from your phone, as it's all in dark mode. So yeah, I know it's cool. Now try the membership for only a few bucks per month and get the full premium use of my videos. Now let's move on to our main topic. We'll start by talking about the first and important Python feature, which is easy and readable. Yeah, writing a code in Python is very easy as it's high-level language, so its syntax is written in understandable English form, and this makes it more readable and easier to learn. And also its syntax is shorter than any previous language like C++ or Java. For example, if you want to write a program to print hello world on the screen, then it will take more than one line of code, maybe 5 or 6 using Java or C++, while in Python writing it takes only one line of code, okay, as you can see on the screen. And what makes its syntax simple is that the dynamic typing feature that I will discuss later in some detail, and also its indentation or spacing feature that removes the concept of using brackets to define function blocks, and there is no need to use semicolons to indicate the end of the code line. And I know if you're an absolute beginner, you don't understand what I'm saying right now. But if you have a programming background, then you know what I mean, okay? But don't worry, you will know all of those things in the future, okay? Now, as you can see, all those characteristics and the internal processes that are performed to reduce the length of the code make the Python syntaxes easier and more efficient to be produced. Now let's move on to the second feature of Python, which is a general purpose programming language. Yeah, as it's high-level language, it's also dedicated to a general purpose, meaning by that it could be used in a wide variety of fields and application domains, as we discussed in the previous lecture about Python uses and data analysis, scientific computing, AI, ML, deep learning, NLP, which is natural language processing, also computer vision, robotics, and much more. And yeah, and that's it. Now let's move on to the next one, which is interpreted. Yeah, Python is an interpreted language, meaning by that its source code is translated to an intermediate language code object, or ILC, that's called a bytecode by the interpreter, which is a small program installed in your computer implicitly, and then this bytecode is compiled and directly compiled by the compiler program or tool, okay, and directly convert it to a machine code that the computer could understand. And this machine code may vary depending on the type of the interpreter system, and also we said those information at the last video. Okay, and each operating system actually has a specific compatible Python interpreter system, and hence a specific compiler to execute the bytecode. Also, the interpretation process of Python source code is done line by line, checking for any syntax error, then compile and execute this line before moving to the next one. So the debugging process also is more easy and powerful. And I know you will know what is the debugging in future if you are still a beginner. Okay, now let's move on to the next one, which is expressive. Yeah, Python is an expressive language, and it's extremely expressive one. And this means any complex program written in any other language could be written in Python with less and efficient syntax with the help of its constructs. And the constructs includes classes, functions, libraries, modules, packages. All of those things represent the constructs of Python. And if you didn't know the differences between them, don't worry, I'll make a separate video to discuss some of the differences and discrepancies between each one of them. Okay. Also, we say that we could write any computer program written in any other language could be written in Python, while there are programs that are written in Python and couldn't be written in some other language. So we are saying that Python is more expressive than this language at this case. Simply, to understand this, imagine that you can express your feelings easy in French in Germany or German, while your friend can express some of his feelings, not all of them, in only one language, let's say French. So at this case, you're more expressive person than your friend. Okay, and that's it. I wish you understand it well. Now let's move on to the next one, which is extensible. Yeah, Python is an extensible one, or highly extensible one, means that you can write or extend your Python code to other language like C++ or Java, and this make it a highly extensible language. And also this may be due to the or its different implementations and development for interpreters that produce different bytecode like Python, Jython, Python, etc. And I'll make also a separate video to discuss the differences between each Python implementation. Okay, and now let's move on to the next one, which is embeddable. Yeah, Python is an embeddable language, which is the reversed process or feature of extensible for Python source code. As we have said, that Python code is extensible because you can write code in any language like C++ in Python script and extend its capabilities, while embeddable means you can put your Python script in any other source code of other language like C++, so it could be integrated and extend the capabilities of the other language. And that's it. I know it's so simple. Now let's move on to the next one, which is free open source. Definitely Python is a free language available on their official website, at which you can download it, and it's an open source, meaning by that you can download its source code, modify it, reuse it, and publish it again with your customizations, modifications, or enhancements made to it, and then you can publish it to the Python community again. Okay, and this concept is called FLOSS, which is free or libre open source software. Yeah, Then let's move on to the next feature, which is portable. Simply means write it once, run anywhere. As for example, if you write your Python code in Windows OS or operating system, then you can run it on any Linux, Unix based systems or distributions, or you can run it on Mac OS. And this is due to the interpreted feature of Python, and because there is a specific Python interpreting system for each operating system. Now let's move on to the next one, which is a large standard library or wealthy API and additional libraries that Python have. And let's discuss this feature. We all know that Python has a large built-in libraries and modules that you can import it and use it. And this process actually speeds up your coding process without needing to write codes for common things again. So it saves you your time and your efforts. And also there are standard built-in libraries for a lot of different uses, like image manipulation, unit testing, string manipulation, debugging, regular expression, databases, math functions, and much also threading and much more. Okay, and that's it. Now let's move on to the next feature, which is so important to know and know the difference between each language and Python. And this feature is dynamically typed. Yeah, Python is dynamically typed, and at the same time is a strongly typed language, as it follows the concept of duck typing. I know you are seeing a lot of ambiguous terms and concepts in that feature, but I'll try to explain each term stated above to understand it more deeply. Okay. Now let's start by talking about dynamically typed. What actually this means. Okay, it means that, for example, the type of the variable couldn't be specified during writing the code, but instead it's decided internally or implicitly during runtime. So we can say that type constraints are not checked during compile time, but once you run the program, it checks for any type or syntax error. And this dynamic typing feature is applied on Python constructs like variables, functions, methods, and objects, but not on classes. And why? Because classes are called user or programmer defined type. Okay. And simply we can say those language with dynamically typed systems, values have types, not the variables itself. Like in C++, for example, if we want to declare a variable that holds or store a value in it, let's say it stores an integer value inside of it. For example, this variable is called x. Now if we want to write a line of code that declares this variable, stores the value inside of it, we write int x equal to 5. And int here refers to the type of the variable, which is integer. Okay, or the type of the value that will be stored in that variable precisely. But in Python we write x equals to 5 directly, and the decision of the type, as we said, occurs dynamically and implicitly during runtime. So we didn't write here the type before the variable to indicate what actually the type of the value to be stored in that variable. So it's quite easy, okay, and makes writing our code so fast and without any common errors. Now let's talk about the strong typed concept or term. What actually this means? It means that this language performs some checks that have stricter typing and syntax rules, and these checks happen at compile time. And also those checks include the most common errors and exceptions that occur and are modified depending on the programming language syntax rules. Now let's talk about doc typing. What actually this concept means. Actually, this is a technique that dynamic typing language follows, and it isn't it's an application of the common doc test. What is a doc test? It simply says if you swim like a duck or walk like a duck or your sound is like a duck, then you're absolutely or definitely a duck. Okay? And if you want to determine the object or if the object is suitable to be of specific type or its suitability, then this technique focuses on the methods and attributes of that object rather than its class type. Meaning by that, it determines the type of the class of this object by looking at this object's behaviors, which or that represents its methods or functions, and also the object's attributes that is represented by the data associated with that object or instance, or we call it data members, data fields, whatever. And also I know that you couldn't understand what I'm saying right now if you're absolute beginner without any programming knowledge or background. But don't worry, in the future you'll know all of those concepts. Now let's leave this feature, okay, and talk about the next and final feature of Python, and also it's an important in every programming language. Okay, now let's talk about the object-oriented feature of Python. Yeah, Python is an object-oriented language. That means it concerns with objects and their data or attributes and their functions associated with those objects, so it can model any real-world situation or problem and solve it. And also Python is a procedural-oriented language, along being object-oriented, so it's very powerful. And procedural-oriented language means that it's a functional programming language that could depend on writing a function for modeling any real world, also any real world situation or problem. And it supports multiple inheritance rather than Java that supports the single inheritance. And the object-oriented technique actually depends on some principles like inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, and abstraction. But we will discuss this whole technique in detail in different video. Don't worry. I know that there are 2 or 3 features that you didn't understand well because you're absolute beginner, but I'll make a separate video for each ambiguous term, okay, to illustrate it more deeply from the scratch. But you will also cannot understand those concepts without get your hands dirty with programming language and the code in the future. And this is my advice, okay? And I think we reached to the end of our video. And now we have reached to the end of our video. Please, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And also don't forget to hit the like button to make this video reach to everyone. And I'll appreciate that if you do it, because it will help me and make all my efforts and time worthy. And also, there is my Patreon account if you want to support me and buy me a coffee, and you will get useful subscription because you will have an access to download my cheat sheets for every video that could be a quick and informative reference for you. Thanks for watching and see you in my upcoming videos. Goodbye.